Each and every single day, hundreds to thousands of people are arrested and booked into the jail system. Many have never been to jail before. It's their first time. They don't know the process from the minute the cuffs get put onto their hands all the way through the potential guilty or innocent finding by a jury at trial. Some people are so overwhelmingly experienced, you wonder how they ever see the light of day again. But that's a part of the justice system. So when people start to formulate these thoughts, especially people that potentially have never been through it themselves because they've lived that perfect life of never being in trouble before, never being arrested, never having to do time, never having to be through trial. They throw their opinions out there, and I get it. I listen to all of them about how someone who's facing charges or going to trial should act, whether they be guilty or innocent. Everybody's different. Every person that's put into that situation has their own way of analyzing it through their mind, how they foresee themselves battling the charges, and how they're going to conduct themselves within a courtroom or an investigation. I'm A.R. Hayes. I'm an ex-convict. Unfortunately, I've had numerous trips to where I had to make that decision on how I was going to conduct myself moving through the process. No, it's not fun. Nobody likes to feel the cold steel cuffs put onto your wrists, whether you didn't do it or you did. It's the same feeling. You don't want to go to jail. Then when you get there, you got to go through that whole process of being degraded, strip searched, booked into the jail. It's okay. People can look at me negatively because I've been through that, so now it's just something used to for me. Doesn't affect me at all. But others, it's a traumatic experience. The way you're going to conduct yourself through the entirety of your case begins the very minute those cuffs are put on your wrist. You have to formulate a decision right off the bat how you're going to act. Only you know whether you're innocent or guilty. So when you look at people like a Brian Kohberger or a Richard Allen of the Delphi case, Scott Peterson or Chris Watts or all of these individuals, and you look at how they conducted themselves from the minute that they were either a suspect of the crime and working their way through the process all the way up until the point they sat in that courtroom at the defense table having to battle for their freedom. They had to make a decision on how they personally were going to conduct themselves. Screaming to the rooftops of how innocent you are. Yeah, some probably do it. I mean, you see outbursts in the courtroom all the time, both on the good side and the bad. You see the innocent that are crying and screaming that they want to go home, all the way to the guilty that are screaming that they wish they had done a better job in the crime they committed and hurt more people. It's all a personal choice by that individual. So when people make the declaration of, well, if he's innocent, he would be screaming to the rooftops, that's not always the case. Maybe he's just a very quiet, private person that conducts himself in a very methodical, calm manner. And exploding with the whole outburst in the courtroom is just not for them. Doesn't mean that they're fully guilty of the charges. It just means it doesn't fit their personality. But also, there's a strategy behind actually fighting your case and the reasons why you would do it the way you do. Some defendants will talk and run their mouths right from the get-go, trying to get themselves out of the charges, and at the end of the day, everything that they've said is actually utilized against them to convict them and find them guilty. Other people don't say a word. They don't say a word. You're not going to use my own words to convict me, and then they will go battle it out in the courtroom based off the evidence, the motions filed through the court, and the witnesses. Many actually win. So let's take just a thought process, because I think about this a lot through all the different times that I've worked my way through the system, and each and every time I actually handled myself differently to a point, but at the end of the day, it all came back to the same actual personality base behind me. I was not vocal. I was not one screaming from the rooftops, and you would never see me actually get held in contempt of court. I was very quiet, at peace, and trusting that the system was going to allow itself to go through the process right in front of me to where I could work with my attorneys to battle whatever came our way. I didn't feel as though I needed to jump up out of my chair and make a scene. But when you look at somebody, let's just take for an instance Brian Kohberger, and everybody's saying, well, if he was so innocent, he would be screaming it from the rooftops. He's been sitting in jail now for over a year. No innocent man would do that. Do you understand? The minute those cuffs went onto his wrist, it didn't matter at that point how he acted or what he said. He was under arrest. What do you want the man to do? Do you want him to flail his arms in those cuffs and make it hard for the officers to detain him to the point to where when he got to the jail, he was treated in a much different manner because of the way he acted, meaning he went into a different actual security level. He goes into a different type of cell. Everything is different when you misbehave compared to just going with the flow and allowing it to work itself out. But when I look back at Brian Kohberger, I see a big screaming of innocence just in the fact that the one big statement that everybody claims he made when he was being arrested was he couldn't wait to get back and be exonerated. That's a pretty big statement of, hey, I'm innocent. To top that off, when he got back to the state of Idaho and began the processes of the court, he walked methodically and peacefully into the courtroom. No outbursts, no craziness, no signs of aggression, no anger issues. Just a simple, I'm going to stand silent. I'm not going to agree to plea to charges I don't agree with. I didn't see anything wrong with it. I didn't see anything that showed me within his character, oh, that's somebody that really needs to be paid attention to. He's crazy, he's nuts, he could have absolutely done this. No, he looked pretty peaceful to me, pretty much in the sense that he had already made up his mind prior to all of us seeing him. He was going to work through the stages and get this to trial and beat the charges. Maybe he would be able to get it dismissed beforehand. We'll see. We'll see. We're still in the midst of working our way through the actual process. But I've seen nothing within his actions that would deem him as someone off the chain just trying to front that he's innocent and really is guilty. But then again, you also, in watching him, can't just say, well, he's definitely innocent, because you don't know. You don't know. Been around a lot of these people, and I've seen how I handled myself. Sometimes I was nervous, sometimes I was shaky, sometimes I spoke, other times I didn't. It all depended on how the whole entirety was happening within the case. But no lawyer who's going to sit right next to you that's going to be your representation to battle for your freedom and your rights within that courtroom is going to really look at you and appreciate you just going off the deep end, being rude, disrespectful, throwing a fit. They would much rather you sit with your hands at the desk and just take everything as it goes and allow them to do their job. Do you get a say in things? Sure. Do you get the outright say? No. You're not going to talk your way out of jail. You're not going to do it. Waving your arms in the courtroom is not going to get you out of the charges you've been charged with. The only thing that could do that is the process. Richard Allen, another one. So why is nobody making a big deal that he's not throwing a fit in the courtroom? Because everybody, of course, that whole side of the line that's not the conspiracy theorists think he's guilty as sin. This is a man that's being transferred all over the place and can't even get settled in one cell to try to battle his case. He has his own lawyers thrown off of the case to get new representation dictated by the actual judge of the case. And now look where we're at. We're in a Supreme Court battling whether that judge is even going to be able to hear the case. But you don't see him going off the deep end. He's working through it. He's filing the motions through the courts via his representation, doing it the only way you can. Would you guys be happier for all those that think these gentlemen are guilty right off the bat? Would you rather see them wheeled in the wheelchair with the spit mask on, fully cuffed up and looking like absolute imbeciles just because you want them to act up in the courtroom? Do you want them to go on disciplinary action within the jail because they're acting up in the jail, screaming their innocence to nobody that cares or wants to listen to it? So now they actually lose privileges because they should act the way you think they should. They should throw a fit. You can't just fall down on the floor of the jail and do snowmen on the concrete floor and think that that's going to get you attention enough to get you sent home. Yes. When an inmate, I call them inmates, I'm sorry, that's really bad. That's like a prison term. When a defendant or a suspect gets booked and brought into the jail, they are the only ones in their mind at that very point and in their heart that know every key detail of whether they did it or didn't. The investigators could possibly have a great case against them, but the only one that knows outright what they've done or have not done would be the suspect and the defendant. They have to sit down and in their mind make a decision of how they want to conduct themselves and also whether they want to follow and trust the lead of their counsel. No, it's not always easy just to trust your counsel. I've had many times that I knew I couldn't trust my counsel, but that doesn't mean that I could begin acting as if I'm qualified enough to defend myself. I think many of you have seen the great demonstration of how that works out for you when you get up there and actually defend yourself as your own attorney when you're not at all qualified to do so. You're just arrogant and egotistical. Have I had the thought of doing that before? Yeah, but I knew I was guilty and I thought it would be fun. People like Brian Kohberger and Richard Allen are working through the system via the law attorneys that they have that know how to file the motions and battle things within the courtroom that are necessary to battle. Could Brian Kohberger be leading the charge in regards to, I want to battle this, I want to battle this, I want to battle the IGG, I want to go after... Yeah, sure, he has say. But trust me when I say your lawyers are not there every day to see you, and you don't communicate with them every day. He has to figure out how to actually conduct himself for the entirety of his stay in that jail. And none of that deems whether you're innocent or guilty. So you better just find a way to do it comfortably, because you're going to be there for the long haul unless you could post your bail. It's just very hard for me to sit back sometimes and listen to individuals state that this defendant or this suspect should act a certain way. Why? Why? Do you know that person? Do you know their personality? Do you know what their thought processes are on how they want to attack the case and the conversations that are happening behind closed doors in private with their actual attorneys? Maybe the attorneys are saying, stay completely silent, don't say anything, we have you, we just need to work through this process. Has that happened with me? Absolutely. I've been told to shut my mouth and not even raise my eyes off of the table because they had something that they wanted to methodically go after within the case. And I just had to trust that because I didn't know how to overcome certain motions and state's evidence and things of that nature. That's what they're paid for. That's why they're there. Yeah, I mean, it is a different feeling when you lay in a jail cell. And I know I went over the other night what it felt like to be innocent and how it devastates your family and it does all of that while you lay in the cell with your head next to the toilet. Well, guess what? Whether you're innocent or guilty, you're going to do the exact same thing. Just the inner feelings are different. I've walked into jail fully knowing I was guilty and not going home. I've signed plea bargains because I knew I couldn't beat the case. I wasn't even going to take it to trial because I knew there was no point. I actually wanted to sign the plea bargain as quick as I could to get to the penitentiary because I knew, for one, I would get less time if I did that. And I would get to my end destination where I could get more comfortable in a quicker, more timely manner. I'm not saying everybody does that. Not every suspect or defendant does the same thing as what I did. But I've also battled it out in court and had to sit my little hiney in my cell and shut my mouth and just deal with it. That's where you learn how to pass your time. You read, you write, you wait for your phone calls. You can't wait to get your mail. You clean your cell floor 18 times a day. You begin working out even when you can't stand doing it. You learn how to play different card games. There's always something that can be done that's going to help you pass the time. It's just what you choose to make of it. I just struggle because I watch a lot of these people in the chat rooms of other discussions that are happening, and they feel as though they should be able to pinpoint all of this stuff. Maybe they were a correctional officer at a penitentiary. Maybe they were a jail detention officer. Maybe they were a warden. Maybe they were a police officer. Maybe they were a lawyer. Maybe they worked at a 7-Eleven as a cashier. Maybe they were a retail management. Doesn't make you an expert of right then and there that person's ordeal. Nobody knows the feelings and what they're trying to show other than people that are in that case. Brian Kohberger is the only one that knows the emotions and the thought processes that are happening within the Idaho 4 Brian Kohberger case. Richard Allen is the only one that knows exactly how Richard Allen feels within the Delphi case. Scott Peterson was the only one that knew how he felt, and Chris Watts was the only one that could feel how he felt going through the process. It's one thing to say, I feel as though he's guilty based off of the evidence, but don't tell me you could tell he's guilty because of the way he is soft-spoken or not ju- jumping off the rooftop trying to say he's innocent. Don't tell me that's how you determine someone's, that's corroborating evidence to go right along with all the BS evidence that's being demonstrated. We put all that together with he's just being quiet. He's not screaming from the rooftops. He's guilty. Let it play out. Let the personality of the individual that's going through the process be their own. Allow them. They're the only ones sitting in that defendant's chair. Allow them the ability to conduct themselves in a manner they seem fit for their best interest in their trial. Because what happens if they are found not guilty and they've been quiet, collected, calm, all the way through the process? They get found not guilty, and everybody's screaming, well, they should have been screaming off the deep end that they were innocent. Why? Look at how it worked out for them. Or look at that person that is innocent and throws a fit in the jail, and then throws a fit in the courtroom and gets contempt of court charges as it does an additional 180 days just to even get started, and they delay their case out another 6 months to a year. You're not doing that 6 months or a year waiting to go to court. They are. Not every case is the same, and I don't care if you've been through it before. I've been through it a lot. I can't tell you what they're feeling. Can't tell you how to conduct yourself. That's all up to the personality of the individual. I can tell you I know how to do the time. I know how to lay in my rack. I know how to clean my cell floor. I know how to play my cards. I know how to make my collect calls. I know the process, so no, I don't get nervous or disturbed by the process. But I'm the very same as anybody else. When I sit in that defendant's chair, I have to make that decision of how I'm going to fight my case and how I'm going to present myself as an individual. I think Brian Kohberger's shown great respect, and I think all these people that are saying he looks weird and this and that, I think he's calm, collected. I think he's allowing the process to handle itself. That's how I would want to look if I was a defendant fighting my case, especially as an innocent man. Even as a guilty man, that might actually work in your favor. But you can't judge somebody by the way they conduct themselves through the process, because if you've never been there and you've never started with the steel on your wrists and worked your way through the booking process to having to get completely naked in the strip searches, all the way through the court and the trial and all of the transportation back and forth and the stress and you getting sick and having no medication, then it's a process. And if you haven't been there and you haven't done it, don't speak upon how somebody else is doing it for themselves. They're battling for their life in their own way. If they get found guilty, so be it. You should all, in your minds, be happy that have already found him guilty now. If a jury finds him guilty later, you were proven right. Be happy. But if he gets proven not guilty, are you going to slam your justice system that they didn't hold him accountable and find him guilty? Or are you going to maybe realize that the justice system process worked and a man was found not guilty, not based on his actions or his verbal words in the courtroom, but because that's the way the process and the evidence portrayed itself to a jury? Don't judge actions. Don't judge looks. Allow the process to do it for you. And then a judge and a jury will make the determination of not guilty or guilty.